What is MSG and it is actually bad for you? In 1968, Dr. Robert Herman Koch fell ill after dinner at a Chinese restaurant. He wrote a letter detailing his symptoms to Prestige Medical Journal, wondering whether his illness had resulted from eating monosodium glutamate, also known as MSG. Quite the connection between his headache and his common seasoning in the American Chinese cuisine was just a hunch, but his letter would dramatically change the world relationship with MSG, inspiring international panic, biased science, and sensational journalism for the next 40 years. So, what is this mysterious seasoning? Where did this come from? And is it actually bad for you? MSG is a mixture of two simple molecules, sodium, which is well established as an essential part of our diet, and glutamate, a very common amino acid found in numerous plant and animal proteins. Glutamate plays a key role in our digestion, muscle function, and immune system. For around the time of Dr. Koch's letter, it has been identified as an important part of our brain chemistry. Our body produces enough glutamine for all this process, but the molecule is also present in our diet. You can taste its signature savory flavor in foods like mushroom, cheese, tomato, and broth. Chasing this recipe is what led MSG invention in 1980. A Japanese chemist named Dr. Ikeko Kikuchi was trying to isolate the molecule responsible for the unique flavor he called umami, meaning a pleasant, savory taste. Today, umami is recognized as one of the 5 basic tastes in food science. Each basic taste is produced by unique molecular mechanism that can be replicated by combining other known as tastes. In the case of umami, those mechanisms arise when you cook or ferment certain food, breaking down their protein and release amino acids like glutamine. But Ikeda found a savory shortcut to producing this chemical reaction. By isolating high quantity of glutamate from a bowl of nirvana and combine them with another flavor acid like sodium, he created a seasoning that instantly increased the umami of any dish. The result was major success. By the 1960s, MSG was the kitchen staple across the most of Asia, and by the mid-20th century, it could be found in commercial food production worldwide. So when Dr. Koch's letter was published, the outburst was immediate. Researcher and citizen demands a scientific inquiry into the popular additive. On one hand, it was unreasonable. The substance has been tested for toxicity, and its health impacts were largely unknown. However, it's likely many people were responding to lack of food safety regulation, but rather than later title. Chinese restaurant syndrome. While MSG was commonly used in numerous cuisines, many Americans have a long-standing prejudice against Asian eating customers, labeling them as exotic or dangerous. This stigma fueled racially biased journalism and spread the fear that eating at Chinese restaurants can make you sick. This prejudice reporting extended numerous studies about MSG and pneumonia, the results of which were much less conclusive than headlines suggested. For example, when a 1969 study found that injecting mice with MSG caused severe damage to their retina and brain, some news outlines jumped to brain that eating MSG could cause brain damage. Similarly, some studies reported that excess glutamate could lead to problems like Alzheimer's. This condition later found is caused by internal glutamate imbalances unrelated to the MSG we eat. These headlines were just products of prejudice reporters. Throughout the late 60s or early 70s, many doctors also considered Chinese restaurant syndrome to be a legitimate ailment. Fortunately, today's MSG researchers no longer see the additive in the discriminatory way. Recent studies have established the vital role gluten played in our metabolism, and some researchers even think MSG is a healthier alternative to added fat and sodium. Others investigate whether the regular consumption of MSG could be linked to obesity. and it's possible that binging MSG produces headaches, chest pains, or heart palpitations for some people. For most diners, a moderate amount of this savory seasoning seems like a safe way to make life a little tastier. What more? In 1960, Dr. Robert Homan Kwok failed after dinner at a Chinese restaurant. He wrote a letter detailing his symptoms to a prestigious medical journal, wondering what his illness had resulted from eating monosodium glutamate, also known as MSG. Kwok's connection between his headache and his common seasoning in American Chinese cuisine was just a hunch, but his letter would dramatically change the world's relationship with MSG, inspiring international panic, biased science, and sensational journalism for the next 40 years. So, what is this mysterious seasoning? Where did this come from? And it is actually bad for you? MSG is a mixture of two simple molecules: sodium, which is well established and an essential part of our diet, and glutamate, a very common amino acid found in numerous plant and animal proteins. Glutamate plays a key role in our digestion, muscle function, and immune system. Around the time of Dr. Koch's letter, it has been identified as an important part of our brain chemistry. Our body produces enough glutamate for all of this process, but the molecule is also present in our diet. You can taste its signature flavor in a food like a mushroom, cheese, tomato, and broth. Cheese in its flavor is what is MSG's invention in 1908. A Japanese chemist named Dr. Ikako Kikunai was trying to isolate the molecules responsible for a unique flavor he called inami, meaning a pleasant savory taste. Today, inami is recognized as one of the 5 basic tastes in the food science. Each base taste is produced by unique molecules mechanism that can be replicated by combining other known tastes. In the case of inami, those mechanisms arise when a cook will ferment certain food. Breaking down the protein release amino acids like glutamate. But Ikeda found a savory shortcut to produce its chemical reaction. By isolating high quantity of glutamate from a bowl of neuroblast and combining them with another flavorant like sodium, he created a seasoning that instantly increased the umami of any dish. The result was major success. By the 1930s, MSG was a kitchen staple across the most of Asia, and by the mid-20th century, it can be found in commercial food production worldwide. When Dr. Koch's letter was published, the outreach was immediate. Researcher and citizen demands and scientific inquiry into the popular additive. On one hand, it was unreasonable. The substance has been tested for toxicity, and its health impacts were largely unknown. However, it's likely many people weren't responding to a lack of food safety regulation, but rather the letter's title, Chinese Restaurant Syndrome. While MSG was commonly used in numerous cuisines, many Americans had long-standing prejudices against Asian eating customs, labeling them as exotic or dangerous. This stigma fueled racially biased journalism and spread fear, and eating a Chinese restaurant could make you sick. This prejudice reporting extended to numerous studies about MS and umami, the results of which were much less conclusive than headlines suggested. For example, when a 1969 study found that injecting mice with NSG caused severe damage in their retina brain, some new outlines jumped to proclaim that eating MSG could cause brain damage. Similarly, what some studies reported is that excess glutamate could lead to problems like Alzheimer's. These conditions were later found to be caused by internal glutamate imbalances unrelated to MSG we eat. These headlines were just the products of prejudiced reporters. Throughout the late 60s or early 70s, many doctors also considered Chinese restaurant syndrome to be a legitimate element. Fortunately, today's MSG researchers no longer see the additive in this discriminatory way. Recent studies have established the vital role glutamate plays in our metabolism, and some researchers even think MSG is the healthier alternative to add fat and sodium. Others are investigating whether the regular consumption of MSG could be linked to obesity, and it's possible that binging MSG produces headaches, chest pain, or heart palpitation for some people. But for most diners, a moderate amount of this savory seasoning seems like a safe way to make life a little tastier.